Good morning, everyone. For those I may not know, my name is Jane Langen, and for this month's leadership meeting, I've been asked to present a data overview of Lanier High School. As you know, we're a traditional public high school of grades 9 through 12, and as part of Gwinnett County Public Schools, we have a very focused local school plan for improvement, or LSPI. We have two main goals right now. The first is to increase the four-year cohort graduation rate by 2%, and the second is to increase the College and Career Readiness Performance Index, or CCRPI. I've graphed our performance in these two areas between 2016 and 2019. Look at the four-year cohort graduation rate. You can see that we're consistently scoring higher than both the county and state averages, with an increase from 2016 to 2017 and then a slight decrease since then. Obviously, we would like to see this turn around and begin increasing and get back to 92% or higher. As for the CCRPI score, we've consistently scored above the state average, but consistently score below the county average, with the exception of 2017. As you can see, our CCRPI score very much mirrors what we're seeing in our four-year cohort graduation rate. The overall purpose of today's presentation is to look at the data for our school, determine where there are potential weaknesses, and then figure out how we can best remedy them to reach our LSPI goals. So we're going to look at demographic data for both students and faculty, explore student achievement data, identify current strengths and weaknesses related to our LSPI, and then start to consider our next steps to address those weaknesses. As we explore the data, I'd really like you to be active participants by considering these questions. Does anything jump out at you immediately as a possible hindrance to us reaching our LSPI goals? For which subjects are our students meeting and exceeding expectations? For which subjects are students not meeting expectations? And finally, are there any commonalities among those subjects where students are underachieving? We'll revisit these questions at the end of the presentation to help guide our thinking and discussions moving forward. Let's begin with student demographics. What I've done here is plotted student enrollment over the last few years, disaggregated by race ethnicity. As might be expected since we first opened in 2010, we continue to see an overall increase in our student population. Interestingly, the majority of this growth has been in our Hispanic population. You can see that the rest of our ethnic groups have remained relatively stable across the years. Looking next at our enrollment, disaggregated by gender, we've seen quite an increase in our male population, while our female population showed a slight decrease and then a slight increase, but nothing like that of the male population. This next graph shows our student enrollment according to educational programs. Our special education program has stayed pretty much the same throughout the years, while our gifted education program showed a slight uptick followed by a decrease and then general leveling off. Our area of greatest growth has clearly been in our regular education program. This next slide, it's been a hot topic of debate in the county of late, so I wanted to include information on discipline referrals pre-pandemic to see if anything emerged. Although this is just a one-year snapshot, you can see that ninth grade males are much more likely to be referred for discipline issues than our females. That trend continues in the 10th grade data. But then we see a significant drop in the number of 11th grade males referred for discipline issues, while that for females remains much the same. Then in the 12th grade data, we see an increase in male referrals once again, while there is a significant drop in female referrals. Again, this is just a one-year snapshot, but it might be worthwhile to see if earlier data yields similar patterns. This next one is a table, and it presents a variety of information about our students. Student attendance is rather unremarkable across the years, with just a slight decrease more recently. The percentage of economically disadvantaged students, the student mobility rate, and the student dropout rate have all remained relatively stable across the years. What stands out to me in this table is that our number of English language learners has doubled since 2015. Presumably, this is related to our increase in our Hispanic population that was noted earlier. In kind, let's look at our faculty demographics. So looking at our faculty data for the 2019-2020 school year, we had 122 faculty members, 89 of whom are white, 18 who are black, and the remaining 15 are distributed among the remaining ethnicities. As for gender, we are 55% female and 45% male. This next pie chart shows the years of experience of our faculty. We do have about 28% of the faculty who are within the first years of teaching. This is the largest slice of our faculty pie. And when you consider the 18% of faculty at the next level of experience, this may be reflective of the turnover rate in the teaching profession in general. While it may seem concerning to some that 46% of the faculty is still in the early part of their careers, I like to see this as a kind of nice balance between new ideas, innovation, latest pedagogy versus time-tested, experienced, practical, teaching experienced faculty that could be very beneficial in the makeup of our course teams. Now that we've examined demographic information, let's take a deep dive into student achievement, beginning with language arts and of course assessments. For the 9th grade EOC, you can see that Lanier is consistently scoring higher than both the county and the state, which is great. This is essentially the same for American Lit and Comp, with the exception of 2014-15, where Lanier was below the county but still above the state. Looking next at the biology end of course test, Lanier continues to show the general trend of scoring higher than both the county and state, with the exception of 2016. Something worth noting, though, is the significant increase in Lanier student scores between the 2016-17 and 2017-18 school years, from 59 to 74% scoring at or above proficient. It might be worth the biology course team reviewing past practices to see if they can pinpoint what went so well that year. Now looking at the social studies student achievement data, we're seeing with United States history that we have a little less of that consistency of being above the county and state averages, with a dip in 2016-17 and again in 18-19, another dip below the county. So a little bit more inconsistency here, though an overall kind of trajectory of improvement. For economics, business, and free enterprise, we're seeing initially starting below the county and state averages, but more recently we've been above the county and state averages, with a large increase in student achievement from 2015-16 to 16-17. With a gain of 29 percentage points of students scoring at or above proficient, and that was maintained for a year, but then has since been declining, still overall increasing that gap between the school and the county and state averages. Looking at mathematics now, we have kind of a different story here than the other subjects. For algebra, we see that Lanier students consistently score below both the state and county, so that's something of a concern. But we're still seeing a positive trend in overall growth, but again, not seeing the level of achievement that we'd like to see. Geometry scores are somewhat similar to algebra, but we do see the scores finally coming up and being above the county and state average. So we're seeing positive change in geometry. So what strengths can we pull out of the data we've seen? Let's start with our dropout rate, which has held steady at 1.6%. While we would obviously like to see that go down, we should certainly celebrate the fact that it hasn't increased. As for student achievement, we have economics, business, and free enterprise, which has over the recent years scored 10% over the district and state averages, so that's a definite strength. Then compared to the growth of the state as a whole, the school has seen 13% more growth than the state has seen over this period of time. Similarly, more recent biology scores were 7% over the district and state averages, with 7% more growth compared to the state. In both achievement and demographic data, however, there have been some weaknesses that have presented themselves. One very timely concern is with our discipline data, particularly in the trend of 9th and 10th grade males being about 3 times more likely to get in-school or out-of-school suspension. This is quite a good bit of missed instruction for those students that will certainly carry over to their achievement on the end-of-course assessments. Looking at student achievement, it's our mathematics courses where students are really struggling. Algebra 1 scores are consistently coming in below both state and county, while geometry scores should be concerning for school, county, and state. The fact that we're not even reaching 50% of students at or above proficient is something that we should all be concerned about. What comes from all of this data analysis is the emergence of a few key areas for improvement. One that has become a hot topic of discussion is discipline. I think the first thing we want to do is collect more varied data on things like race, ethnicity, on those students who do get discipline referrals. We want to be sure that referrals are not the product of cultural misunderstandings between teachers and their students. Additionally, we would do well to consider alternatives to ISS or OSS that certainly have a negative impact on the individual student's learning. Lastly, we might want to consider implementing an upperclassmen mentorship program. This could be seniors paired with freshmen that help kind of keep them on the right path and help them understand the consequences of their behavior from a peer who has already been there, done that. The other key area of improvement would be with Algebra 1. We might need to look more closely at the curriculum map and adjust it to allow time for remediation. Next, we should consider implementing a peer tutoring program, which could be a possible extension of the mentorship program I just mentioned. Lastly, we should initiate a team, perhaps the course team, to explore more strand-specific data for algebra to determine if there are any points in the curriculum that we need to revamp to increase student achievement. The next steps and our focus for the remainder of the meeting is to review those questions that I talked about at the beginning of the presentation, and I'll leave this slide up here when we break into small groups for discussion. We'll discuss some possible causes of why different things may be happening, and then explore potential solutions. Finally, we'll want to develop actionable steps to help remedy the key issues that were uncovered with the data in Discipline and Algebra 1.